Hi Piccolo players. I've been asked several times in various videos about questions about head joint alignment with the body on the Piccolo, and also what is ideal of how much of the head joint hole to cover with your bottom lip, and those kinds of basics. So I'm going to go over what I do. First of all, the placement of the head joint is, for me, it's basically the same as the flute, where I have a straight line, make a straight line, more or less, you can't see the hole very well, but from the hole of the head joint straight down to the first key. And you know, when we put the head joint on a flute, we all look down and see if we can visually see a line from the head joint, or from the hole to the first key. On the Piccolo, however, I think about that, but when I'm checking the visual line, I always go top to bottom rather than bottom to top. I don't know what, visually I feel like I can see better from this little head joint hole straight down to this first line. And then I always do this with my index finger. It helps take out this bulbous area, you know, right here in the head joint. That distorts your visual line. So sometimes when you're checking the alignment, it can look like the head joint hole is further off to the side or one side or the other. So if I put my finger here as I'm looking down, it helps my eyesight make a clearer line straight down. So anyway, I always do that, put the head joint on and look straight down this way with my finger like that. Also, I have through the years put a marking, I don't know if you can see it, on the silver part here of the head joint. It's a little black marking there, and it aligns with the black marking in the silver area below the cork. And I just always align it there. So I use it's a Sharpie, just a permanent marker Sharpie. It always rubs off eventually, because you don't want to be with there's no barrel to hold on to on a Piccolo to be putting on your head joint. You don't want to be touching the keys as much as possible. So I just, I have it marked, and I just try to put it right on there, right at the get-go. So I'm not constantly moving it around. Also, you could try to put some cork grease on the cork. I don't know where mine went, but you just put a little on your pinky and put it on the cork, and then it helps so just to keep it loose so you're not having to really force your head joint off and on. And then for me, I always have my head joint pulled out all the way up until the cork. Can't really see, but I have it all the way through the silver area. Because I'm in Hawaii, I play outside all the time, even with the symphony, we play outside quite often. And in my practice space right now, it's probably 90 degrees in here. So it's hot, I'm gonna be sharp. So I just have it pulled out all the way. One thing about the head joint though, if you're finding that your intonation, when you check it with a tuner, is wildly out, or some notes are so sharp and other sets of notes are incredibly flat and you can't find any kind of middle ground, your cork might be in the wrong placement. So to check that, take your cleaning rod that comes with your Piccolo. Don't use a flute one because it's not the same. And at the top or the bottom area of the rod, there's a little notched area. And this is on silver, those little silver cleaner rods as well, or this one happens to be wood. But it's an exact measurement so that when you put this into your head joint, that notch should be exactly in the middle of the hole there. So if it's not, that means your cork is in the wrong place. It's too far down or too far up, or something's wrong with your cork. And I would advise to take it in. I wouldn't try to unscrew the top and mess around with your cork. You can mess up your whole Piccolo really easily doing that. Another thing to think about is for your keys to be generally straight up to the ceiling. Same for flute. Straight up to the ceiling. You don't want it like this. Your head joint's gonna be rolled in too far, or way out like that. Generally, I mean, some people do a variation, are slightly one way or the other, but generally speaking, the keys should just be straight up to the ceiling, and then the head joint hole makes a straight line to that first key. And then for how much of the embouchure hole to cover, and where it goes on the lip, for me, I put it up quite high, and I think that's pretty typical for Piccolo. It's going up like basically here, like halfway up the bottom lip. And then I'm covering, let me see how much I'm covering. Just covering like a quarter of the hole with my bottom lip. I don't know if you can see this. So I'm not covering very much, but it's up pretty high on my bottom lip. And then the corners come forward here to kind of hold a aperture. If you're covering the hole too much or like rolling in, that is an easy thing to do because sometimes the high notes, you can kind of squeeze them out like that because all the air is going straight in, you know, because you're kind of rolled in and or covering so much of the hole. But it has a really squashed sound, strangled sound. So if you're getting something like, and it cracks up all the time to the next octave, your notes keep cracking up, then you're covering way too much. And also the other thing about the tone quality, if you're covering too much, is this very condensed, dense sound. It's more centered for sure, but kind of too centered. On the other spectrum is if you're not covering enough and doing kind of like flute embouchure and placing your head joint way down here like a flute, then you're getting like you're having problems like getting the note. You're just way too loose. And like I said, your piccolo head joint is probably down here like a flute, or like maybe up here like a flute, and not all the way up here. And then the aperture is just too big. Like I was trying to create like what I would play on flute for middle G, my embouchure. You know, I'm getting notes out, but it's just, it sounds really fuzzy. Intonation's going to be impossible. A needle on a tuner would just be like all over the place because I can't find anything. Okay, so I hope just those few brief things are helpful in aligning your head joint, how much to pull out, keeping your keys to the ceiling, putting your head joint up a little higher than the flute, right up about there, and then only covering like a quarter, maybe even less of the hole. Okay, so I hope some of that was helpful, and thanks for watching.